Alright, welcome to Stampscaping 101. We're going to finish off another stamp sketch here. We have these mountains in the background, cabin with fence, and this road kind of leading into the scene. I'm thinking about just a pretty straightforward color palette here in terms of brown, green, brown, and maybe some grays back there in the distant peaks. But let's see how it goes. Okay, now I'm coloring in, and one of the things that I'm always talking about with um, coloring and lighting at the same time is kind of the absence of some color in your color zones, maybe we'll call them, okay? So on this road right here, I mean, I'm using a very light tone in the antique linen right now, but leaving a little bit of area lighter, okay? And not just coloring it in as one flat plane, okay? This is supposed to be something that's going back in the distance, maybe 20 feet, so that wouldn't be the same lighting from front to back, okay? So it doesn't matter where you leave some areas light, just leave some of it light, all right? Okay, now this antique linen is a really great foundation tone for any kind of color scheme that you're going to work with, so just so that my grassy areas, my green areas, don't look so kind of unrelated to the rest of the scene, I'm going to put that over, quite a good deal of the imagery in here. We'll certainly have it over the brown cabin. Okay, the wooden cabin. All right, but I'm also applying it in my grassy area, but also leaving a little bit of the grass a little bit light. I'm smearing some of my black there, but that's okay. Just see that as some kind of tone that you're also adding into your scene. All right. You can heat set if you need to, okay? Now, it's one of those things. I mean, I re-inked my Marvy pad at one point in time when I was doing these stamp sketches. Okay, so it left a little bit of residue on top of the glossy surface. Dye-based inks work by staining, okay, so they're penetrating the surface. But if you're working with kind of a thicker style of ink or an ink that's, you just have a lot of ink in the pad, you can get that. All right, but by the time I finish with this, that's not really going to matter. All right, because we're working at the grayscale anyway. Okay, so you can really see my lighting starting to appear. We're not really lighting something, you're just applying shadow, and it depicts lighting as a result, okay? So you add a darker area, and the lighter things, objects within the scene, seem lighter by contrast, okay? They're still the white that they were before, or whatever color you've retained, but by relation, so you're creating contrast. Okay, so see that cabin right back in there. Now we have a lot of different areas in here. I have a feeling that we'll be using a lot of alcohol pens. I think alcohol pens will be kind of a nice addition to this. They can get into really specific areas. That was the walnut stain. Let's start addressing some of this green grass area. Okay. Keep forgetting the name of this one. Peeled paint. Kind of a nice aged looking green, kind of a dull color, to depict a more weathered style of a weathered tint of that hue. Okay, see that right there? See, I'm leaving a little bit of my grass, a little bit lighter in there. Well, maybe I'll bring some of this green a little bit farther down. You blend kind of some green into your brown, and then of course you have the brown in the green too, okay? That way they don't look so unrelated. You want to create relationships throughout your piece. Imagery, colors, values, textures, etc. and it creates a greater continuity between all the different areas. So we have background, midground, foreground, grass, dirt, wood, rock, and you want them all to have their own distinct personalities, but you want them to relate in some ways because they're all within the same piece as well, okay? Unless you're making a statement on, different textures or something like that and how different they are, okay? But from kind of just a scenic depiction standpoint, continuity is kind of always desired in order to create like a visual harmony. Okay, so I'm just working incrementally a little bit darker as I go, okay? Now I'm working with a darker green now, okay? So I might not color, that ridge, say, of grass the same way. I have a little bit darker down below, a little bit lighter up top. It could have been darker up top, lighter below. Just as long as there's variation, okay? Here's some different things you can kind of look for. Here's some trees right in here. And they could be casting some shadows like this, okay? And then I can put some more grass down below, or green down below. Like that, but you see that area in the meadow where there's variation now, okay? Just because I put a little streak up here and I put some down here, but I've left this area light in the middle there. So see that it's creating kind of a, scenic lighting within that given area, okay? You can have variation within given shapes, areas, etc. Okay. Now, I mean, at some point in time, I'm kind of making this a real narrow kind of applicator, but, pens or something like that could be much more effective in some areas when we're talking about really specific, detailed types of applications. Shadows on the cabin or something like that. Just break out your alcohol pens for that. Okay, here's a couple other browns here. Let's go, and I think this road is looking really good, but let's show you what this looks like if we kind of increase our values. Okay, see that little bit of darkness right there? That makes our lighter area stand out a little bit lighter by contrast, right? But see, I'm just kind of taking this in, a reasonably, gradual fashion. I mean, this hasn't taken long to add. What do we add? We're on our sixth color right now, okay? I mean, this hasn't taken a long time. The antique linen is going to get the most amount of coverage because it, covered a lot of different areas and was kind of a base coat for other colors to come. And that, took all of a couple minutes. Okay, one of the things I like to do is I like to bring in some browns, some extra browns into my green tones. I think it makes them look a little bit more earthy and less kind of electric and loud, okay? See that right there? I'm kind of retaining that light area. When you get into your medium and darker tones, that's when people that are kind of learning lighting lose it because they get really comfortable with the color applications, and then they kind of wipe everything out because they're using the darker tones in the same area or with the same amount of coverage that they did with maybe the first color, okay? But that's all right. I always tell people I'd rather people kind of use too much ink than not enough and to have their pieces look anemic, okay? You want them to look nice and vibrant, and I'd rather someone just go too far than to always kind of have their pieces kind of look a little bit too hesitant and maybe unresolved and, maybe a little anemic, from not using enough ink. Just go overboard, because then you'll have a much better feel of kind of when to, stop adding ink in future pieces. So you can, sacrifice a couple pieces or something like that, or whatever. Few, in order to really kind of ingrain your personal preference as far as where you should go with your coloring, okay? See it as studies, you're doing some experiments and studies. And then sometimes if you go too far, and let's say we color all this in, oh my gosh, I took it too far, I lost my light. Just make your area around it a little bit darker, and then your darker area that you've taken too far will seem one step lighter by contrast again, okay? So you can learn, when you take things too far or whatever, when things aren't looking good, that's when you come up with your best kind of processes and techniques, and you learn a lot about kind of yourself and, I don't know, where you want your pieces to go. And that might evolve, too. It might change over time. We have our kind of personal preferences. All right, now this is looking pretty good down below, but I haven't forgotten about the mountains or anything like that. The mountains, of course, I've kind of left them largely unaddressed right now. It's because I'm thinking about going with a little bit of different color scheme up there. Okay. Okay, so see this right here? I'm really kind of getting the lower left and right hand corner really good. Okay. All right. Now, we've worked through a range of tones. You can see how this looks in terms of a value scale. It's going from kind of light, a little bit darker, kind of medium, and then black. Oh, here's my dark brown, like that, okay? So when you grab your pads and you work this way, just grab them out, lay them out, light, medium, dark. Kind of, something like that. But have a range of values, and it could be a range of intensity, bright to dark. Bright to dull to bright, light to dark. And when you have these ranges that you're adding into your pieces, what you're doing is you're adding that nice visual richness into your pieces, potentially more visually rich than, than having it, a little bit more, isolated, I guess you can say, to, a narrow range. So in the visual language, you're talking about color, value, intensity, etc. There's textural differences going on in pieces all the time. Don't get it over, you don't need to confuse things. If you only stuck to light and dark, that's going to get you a long way, and that's largely what my pieces are doing. I go dark, light, dark, light, dark. Let's go from the bottom to the top. Dark, light, dark. Well, I haven't finished up here, but I'll go darks and lights up here too. Okay, so here's some ranges of hue I'm thinking about using. Okay, these ones right down here, these browns could look pretty good on my cabin, I think. And maybe some grays and blues, maybe even a little bit of purple, huh? I think that might be kind of interesting, as long as it's like a real pale version, okay? So if you have, you have your alcohol markers or whatnot, you can play around with these, but I'll apply these, again, going from light to dark, okay? So I make things visual for myself. I see what I have, and I just grab them. So it doesn't have to be kind of theoretical. Let's see, will this blend in with this? I don't know. If you put these right next to each other, you can see what blend in with each other really well. Okay, now I'm going on my mountains. I'm kind of hitting my shadow areas on the mountains. Shadow areas, you're saying. What shadow areas? Well, on my designs themselves, you can see this oscillation of light and dark within here. Okay? So I'm reiterating the lighter, or the darker areas with some additional tone, okay? So it's right here. You can see these areas down here. So every time I draw a design too, I'm doing that same type of thing. I'm oscillating lights and darks across it. I'm playing with textures, and I'm making sure that I have visual variation throughout the piece, and then I try to balance things out as far as harmony goes, visual harmonies within the designs. And then, of course, you have to think about things like, you know, their blending capabilities and if they're going to blend really well. And how can they be dissected to use just for certain portions of the designs to really expand on the potential for the, whoever's invested in the stamps so they can use them in many different ways, not just one. Okay? There's a lot of designs out there on the market where you can use them one way, but just with a few tweaks, those designs could have been so much more for the end user, in my opinion. So you always want to, when you look at a design and you're kind of making your assessment, think about it being used in different ways as well. Okay? Then, as a whole, which is the intended way, but you want to really be able to maximize the potential of something, and what is that design's potential is something that, I think could be considered. Okay, so this is a little bit of, it's a little bit of a pale violet. So see, I'm bringing this up into the mountains. It's that kind of that colored light that we see, at times in the distance or whatnot. So I'm adding it up here, but I also added it down here on the road for a little bit of continent. I don't know if you can see a tiny tinge of pink right down there, right? Or purple. But when you look at it like that, I mean, it just looks like another tone. Okay, now I'm just going over this whole thing now. Not over the exactly whole thing, but this is a blue tone. And I'm adding it over a lot of this. I'll leave some of these peaks just the white of the paper. Okay. This is a really pale. This is what's really great about these alcohol pens. You can add. See that right there? I just added it right there. Okay. Can you see the difference between that and that? It's just a little bit different, but it has more body now by having some of that against that. Okay, so I mean, don't do it over the whole thing. I mean, you could, but I wouldn't. But see, I can add some of this into the sky, but maybe leave some of it just as is. Okay, let me see if you can see this tiny tinge of kind of a difference right here. I don't know if this camera's going to pick it up, but there's white down here, and there's a little touch of difference. You can even put it on your rooftop here. See, in the areas where you've retained light, this type of color shows. I mean, it's a really, really light tone. I often use this one as it's pale blue. Okay, it's like a 5% blue, maybe. Okay, all right, now here's gray. This is like what is that? Maybe like a 10% gray, maybe? So let's go and add that. Okay, so see, I'm just kind of reiterating my shadows again. It gets a little bit darker, a 10% gray over a 5% blue, kind of. It doesn't create like a 15%, it's not like that, where it's just so straightforward. But see this, adding this behind this rooftop right here, makes the rooftop stand out a little bit lighter because I've made the area behind it a little bit darker, like that, okay? So play contrasts against one another. Maybe I'll go color this peak in right here dark to contrast against this lighter peak right here on the other side. Remember that peak in the background might be 10 miles away from this one right here, so it stands to reason there would be some different lighting. It'd be different lighting, whatever values on each one. Okay, this is going in with this gray. But see, adding it underneath that eave right there creates a little bit more separation between the vertical side of this cabin and the top side. These are all in the designs, okay? Do you see what I'm talking about in my designs here? It's not just an outline design. I try to not to have any outlines in my designs. But see this shadow down here? All I'm doing is I'm going in on the design, and I'm just reiterating the shadows. So just look at the designs, and you'll see the lighting that I've kind of already established as a head start in the designs, okay? And you're just going in there, and you can use that as your cue for your coloring, or your coloring for lighting, okay? Coloring for coloring is, coloring something to get that color. Coloring for lighting means just coloring less, the retention of some light areas. So here on the road, this is a space, right? You leave some areas light in that space. Here's my grassy area. There's some little bit of a light area in the grass, okay? Cabin top, it's darker on the sides than on the rooftop. And on the mountains here, you have some areas of light and dark within those spaces, okay? All right, so let's go with one more tone. This is a little bit darker. 30% gray, I don't know, something like that. Sometimes you have to go in with the dark, and then if it stands out a little bit too much, you come in with your blender pen and blend that out a little bit more, okay? Okay, I think that is about right. I'm thinking about leaving my sky. Sometimes I always color in my skies, but I've been leaving it lighter at times, so I can do different things with my white pigment ink, and I think that looks pretty good. So, I don't know, just doing something specifically for my particular, I don't know, whatever, education or expansion, I don't know, whatever you want to call it. Okay, so let's take and see that cabin right there? I mean, that cabin looks okay as is, but I'm thinking about, as I was doing this, I was kind of debating on whether or not I want to put a little bit of a light in that cabin area in the windows there. Maybe not. Maybe this scene's light enough. I was going to just take a paint pen and, put some lighting in those windows. Like it's been interior lit, which I like to do in all my nighttime types of scene structures like this. You just fill in. If there's kind of a black, darker area for the interior of the cabin, you just kind of fill that in like that. It kind of stands out a lot, so you have to put, a little bit more here and there. But here's a little bit of a, it's like a beigeish tinge. I'm going to use some of this right here and see if this stands out here on this fence, okay. I usually use white for this, but I have these different colors now, so I thought, let's try this. This is the Artistro. Or it comes from the Artistro multi-pen set. Oh, this fence here. Okay, let me do something here. I don't know if this is really going to show up very well. Maybe not. But I'll just put a little of this brown on these posts right here. Yeah, that stands out a little bit. They're a little bit green because I've applied the green right over that, but we can kind of change that a touch. We can create a little bit of separation between the fence and that grass back there, okay? And that's what these pens are good for. Paper towel, not so much. Paper towel is really, perfect for doing kind of vast areas of color areas, but not like specific like objects there. Okay. Yeah, hopefully the video's picking that up like that. So I've colored in, but that little highlight is kind of standing out nice too. These browns, I'm kind of adding it in there. It almost looks like it's lighting it. We shouldn't be making the fence look lighter, but maybe it's just because it's, a warm tinge of brown, So here's a little bit of a darker brown. So let's add some of that at the base. Really, that really stands out still. I think I stamped down my fence before I re-inked my pad, my black pad. Let's see. I need a darker gray. Let me go with this is a shuttle art gray. Okay. I just mix and match. I mix and match my pens. These shuttle art pens are like 50 cents each. It's not bad, you know. You can pick up like a set of these pens. I think pens are like fashion, though. People don't want to, you know. A lot of people don't want. I don't want a 50-cent pen. You know what I mean? It's like, and I get it. Okay. I don't worry about that type of thing. Okay. All right, there. That fence is standing out much more, you know, in contrast now, and plus it has some different colors on it. You know, varied colors. I think that's the first time I've colored it so much. But see that? Okay. And then when I spray seal this too, that black is going to look much darker. Well, I don't know, much darker, but it'll look darker. Okay, let me see. Let me bring out some of these highlights again. I colored over some of those highlights a little bit, but this will make it look a little bit more three-dimensional by having that highlight on top of there. And believe it or not, the designs have highlights right on there too. See this tops of these right in here? So what I'm doing is I'm reiterating that kind of idea with some additional little dots of ink. Sometimes it's a little line. But see, I break it apart. I go a little bit of line, dot, 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 you know, a little bit stronger highlight. See, this is in a lighter area, so I can put a little bit more. But where it goes into the, you know, darkness right here, like a couple dots. If you put too much, just rub off the dot. It'll come right off. Let me see if I can. I don't know. It's coming off a little bit, kind of. I'm trying to do it with my finger. You can do it with a little scratch knife or something like that. Okay. So, anyways, uh, maybe it's time that I add. Oh, okay. Now see this fence in the distance here. I don't know if you can see it right in here, but I am going to kind of reestablish that. Maybe this pen is really good for that. It's not so stark white. See, I can kind of just reiterate that fence in the distance here. You know, because I didn't want to work around that little fence in the distance like that. You know what I mean? You can't like mask that off and color in, okay? But you just go and reestablish it with your, you know, your pens like this, okay? And you're good to go. About like so, okay? All right, now the rooftop here is a little bit lighter. It's already light, but I can add a little bit more of texture on here using this pen, like so. And then you can add little kind of highlights down here on your road. And you say, hey, what are all those dots on the road? That doesn't make sense. It's all over us in nature, okay? Here's a case right here. Here's these little highlights right here. These are the types of things that I'm doing. It's like, you know, a little thing of light. This is a black case right here, okay? And, you know, you see these highlights on there, like that, okay? That's what kind of brings everything to life, you know, especially on a textured surface. When you're adding little highlights like this on even like the smallest of little details, what you're saying is that object is not flat like it actually is, you know. But it's representing something three-dimensional. Okay, so let me show you what this does down here. Okay, let me see. Hopefully. Okay, see these little highlights down in here? I even put a couple little highlights on those rocks right in there. But, I mean, it's not like you're saying, oh my god, this is just crawling with tiny little dots or something like this. Is holding it at an arm's distance. But I think that people kind of pick that up I mean, they can. You can kind of read it, but I don't think people are going to pick up your thing and say, "Oh my gosh, this that your scene's full of little dots," or something like that. It just looks like illumination and highlighting. Okay. Okay. Here's some green for the green. Add in some highlights in my green area. When you're applying colors in that dye-based ink layering technique, even though we have a range of values in there from light to dark, it can look a little monotonous and kind of without character. So what you do is you can just reintroduce that character into that area. Character in terms of textures. Okay, see, I mean, it's subtle. So I'm applying a lot of that, this green in the same value area. I'm not applying it in the super dark areas. I'm kind of just applying it in the areas where it's almost invisible. And then I kind of bring it out into the darker areas where it's standing out more by contrast. And then see this area in here, I don't have any because it would really stand out, against that darkness in there. So, it's not like a big, huge kind of a value change in those areas, okay? I mean, you could, like I said, if you want to make something stand out, for a reason, you can certainly do that. Let's see. I think this is my dry pen. I didn't toss it or something. Shake this up here. You have to really shake up the style of acrylic paint pen. These paint pens, I haven't had a clog on me yet, and I know you know what I'm talking about. People we get these, especially with gel pens. They make even gel pens now, though, the new gel pen styles, they don't really clog because they make the inks a lot thinner than what they used to be. Okay, but it just makes it so that every time you use them, even if you use them the day before and you really shook up your pen, it's probably a good idea to really shake it up again because you get a lot of separation with the pigment and binder. In this case, the binder is water. And, that's just the trade-off for, having a good working pen whenever we need it. It's not clogged up on us, even if it's been sitting around for a while. Shake it up, and it's ready to go. But like I said, the gel pens these days, too, even the really cheap sets, those gel pens are pretty good. They're just a little bit more watery, so when you apply the ink or the paint, like that, it's not quite as opaque as maybe I'd prefer, but I understand it from a kind of a construction standpoint of that's the other side of not having these types of pens clog on us or dry, where you just can't use it again. Okay, so just going in with some of these peaks here and adding some little details like that. I add a little bit to my rooftop here. It's white, but it's showing the color underneath, so even when I apply white, it's not super white and opaque. Okay, so let's add some of this white maybe in the lightest of area right in here. I have a plan for this area right in here. I was thinking maybe now's the time to do it, but I'm going to add this writer here. I'm going to call this piece something like, coming home or home or something like that. This is a strong visual lead in this fence. The fences are creating like super strong visual lead-ins to the piece. And, it's perfect for, this writer right in here, okay? All right, so let me just stamp this out right here. So see that character right there? I have to kind of decide where he'd fit in. If I stamp him right down here, we're saying that you know, this rider's like a foot tall or something like that. So you have to find kind of where, and there's, you know, it's not like, oh, I missed it by a millimeter or something like that, or a centimeter. You know, just as long as you have it in kind of the general area, it'll be fine. So the fence is kind of going back in perspective quite a bit. So I will stack him right here. Okay, remember, the lower you have something, the closer it represents, okay? So it's the base of where something is. So I'm stamping this one, and it's like a 3/4 of an inch lower than the base of the cabin. So it's saying that he's much closer to us, you know, going back in perspective, okay? All right, now I'm holding this down a little bit longer because I did apply some alcohol ink to the paper, you know, the cardstock in the background, and this is a dye-based ink. It's not going to go on, it's not going to apply to alcohol ink really well. It should do okay because I didn't use a ton of alcohol ink. Okay, so there we go right there. Isn't that perfect in terms of the visual lead-in? So the visual path for us as a viewer, we're going to come around like this and go right around there. All right, now that horse is a little bit green. Yeah, so we're just going to go in and, you know, redefine that. Oh, my ink is a little bit wet there. Maybe I'll let that set up and dry a little bit. Or you can heat set it too. Also, my acrylic paint pen, I put some dots in the background. Let's see if we can see it here. But some of those dots are showing through because, you know, dye-based ink is a water-based ink, and it's not going to stick to, you know, like acrylic real well. So just fill it in, you know, just, you know, color right over with your, you know, your alcohol pens. I'm saying that maybe not everyone has alcohol pens, but I know a lot of us, you do out there, so. Going with some of this brown. And then what I'll do is I'm going to use some of this lighter, kind of pale orange or something like that. Orange is kind of related to brown. And I'll blend that in a little bit more, okay? Yeah, maybe I blended out a little bit too much. One good thing about these pens is you can just keep adding, you know, until you get the right amount that you want. There we go. I think that looks pretty good. Something like that. All right. Little detail. Do you see that shadow at the base of the character? Remember about the reiteration of shading within your designs. That's a little bit too dark. Let's go with let's start off with a real pale tone like that. Okay. So I'm kind of doing the shadow the same color as the road, okay? Yeah, let's try this one. This one's a little bit of a greenish tinge. Not that it would be that color, but it just kind of relates to this greenish tinge over here. All right, so I've kind of added it right in there. Here, I added that blue before. Let's just kind of blend that out like this, okay? And that is that, okay? See that little shadow is a little bit stronger there. It's a little detail type of thing. Okay, so let's add in some extra textures and lighting. That should do it. Let's see if I have a cotton ball still that'll still work. We have our brilliance, Moonlight White. You can use whatever brand you want. I didn't used to use so much brilliance, but I'm using it now. It I started using it on things like foils and kind of the types of surfaces that traditional pigmentings wouldn't work. And I like to use kind of a pigment ink when I'm in what I'm doing right now because it wouldn't dry so fast. The brilliance dries really fast on cardstock, but I find that it works just fine. But on papers like cardstocks, your Hero Art, Stamp It Up, whatever, white pigmentings, those work just fine. Okay, those don't have a reputation for drying on glossy cardstock, but if you're just applying it in a real thin layer, it's not going to have any problem with drying. But that being said, on these types of surfaces, the regular types of pigmentings, you want to spray seal it with the pigment ink. The brilliance, it'll dry on this just fine, and it adhere to the surface just fine too. So that, I don't know, I'm just using these ones these days. Okay, so adding this, and I'm adding it where light meets dark. So light is in the sky, and I'm going darker, taking this into my darker area, and that looks like it's, it's being backlit, and light is coming from the background. Okay, like that. See that beautiful lighting now, right? And I can do that because I've left my area of my sky just completely white. A lot of times I'll go blue or whatever colors in the sky and leave a little bit of white, but this time I just left the entire white up there so I can kind of come down from the top and go right down over my peaks. It gives the peaks a different look, having them really being very top lit like this, okay? It's like this veil of kind of illumination, a curtain of illumination coming down, soft illumination too, into the scene like that. Okay, now having that kind of come down like that from the top down, let's bring in some of that element into our scene as well down here, okay? So we're going to look where light meets dark, okay? So you start it in the lighter area, like this, okay? Now I just re-inked my white, so there's a lot on there, so I'll just use a very light touch here, okay? See that little bit of a glow that we have now? I mean, the shadow is still there, but we also have this kind of illumination working now, okay? Let's use, I'm being, pretty methodical about it in terms of my application, okay? So don't rush it. If you can't see it, that's fine, but that's better than applying too much too soon, okay? Even though you can just wipe it right off, but why not just kind of take it nice and gradually? What you're working with is like a 1% white, okay? Of this at its full strength. So see it as like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10% or something like that of an addition. Don't try to get to the eventual, kind of destination application in 1 or 2 taps, okay? It's just so much easier just to kind of control it and to apply how much you want there. But look at that illumination of that character right now. See that? Doesn't it have a different feel? And I say feel because it's a textural type of thing. It's a visual texture down here. Now it's like a soft element right next to that character. And the cabin's a little bit soft. When I stamped out this cabin, it was, I needed to re-ink my pad. So it stamped out lighter, but now it just looks like it's farther off in the distance. Okay, now see this visual lead-in right here? I mean, I like it real strong like that, but I just like to vary it a touch. Watch this right here. Let's just put it out a little bit of this. See, this is where my light meets dark. I'm not doing it down here because there's no light down here, okay? So let's bring this in a little bit like so. And see there's light meets dark over here too. I mean, I could add it here and there, but it just kind of puts that little kind of misty type of look. See these trees in the distance too? That little bit. I wiped off my pine row, at the base when I stamped it right in here. So what I can do, it's lighter to begin with, so, but I can reiterate that with a little bit more of this. So, see, when you darken areas on your designs, in certain areas, you're reiterating shading, okay? But now in these lighter areas in here, you can reiterate lighting with light, or with white. Reiterate shading with dark, or darker doesn't have to be in black, it could just be a really pale version of some color, okay? But just darker than what it is at any given time, okay? Okay, I'm going to try to have a lot of light coming through here, so let me try to get a pretty big application of this. That mountain right there was all one tone, but look at it now, it's varied, and that's what, it's probably hard to see right now. Let me take this out so you can see the top a little bit easier. Alright, so see that? What's going on from a textural standpoint? You've added little crisp textures and those little painted dots. Let's add in a little bit of a loop in or something like that. I don't know, it doesn't look like you've even used this one yet. Or I haven't used it in a while. Okay, these are the artiste rays, so you can see right through the barrel, which is a good idea. You need to be able to see what your yeah, I guess I have used it before. There's paint in the tip there, but okay. So this is just a little bit of purple. This will be good too because it's there was, or it is purple. That purple tinge up in the mountains. Purple Mountains Majesty or whatever. And we're bringing this down into the grassy area. I'm clustering it in these areas, rather than it's like spacing one flower kind of perfectly quarter-inch apart from each other. Now, check this out. It's really subtle. You can't really see it like this, okay? But then you give a card to someone, and if they look closely like this, can you see all those little purple flowers in that area? Okay, see in the distance right here, those ones. That's what we always learned in classes. What you do is you reward someone for further inspection. So, all right. So anyway, that is finishing off yet another scene. I've kind of been holding the last one out from my stamp sketch video here. It's because I haven't decided. I've left so much room for interpretation up here. I think what I want to do is I want to do this composition about 3 times, just with a different sky up here, because there's so many things that I want to try with this piece right here. I should put a sailboat out here too. But this is another piece right here that was really fun in terms of the visual lead-in, super strong, and I wanted to use that old man and dog image like that too in here. But again, this is a perfect example of lighting. Look at all of your different areas: sky, background, structures, grassy area, road area. Just retain, all you have to do is retain even one area that's a little bit lighter, or a lot lighter, in each space, and you have lighting down perfectly, okay? I mean, you could, bisect this off, and it could be 2 areas of light and dark on the road or something like that. But just in general, you have those ranges of tones. In here, it's not white or anything like that. It's just a lighter area, so it just means when you get into your medium and especially your darker tones, you're just using them a lot more selectively, okay? Then you can be a lighting kind of specialist in your own scenes, okay? And it just simply means don't color the whole thing in equally. Okay, so thanks again for watching. And as always, thanks for tuning into the Stampscapes channel.